gotta tell you, I really love this show. I think this is like really something special. It's incredibly sophisticated. I want to first talk about just some amazing flourishes with this episode. I love the title, The Star Spangled Man. That sounds like it's a fantastic book that you get assigned in school. And then also, I loved the intro, because, we do these breakdowns without sound, so I just want to mention it here. When they had the marching band at the school play over the credits, the Marvel logo and stuff like that. That was just, chef's kiss, as they say. It was just really, really above and beyond. Most people, particularly for Marvel, aren't asked to make those kind of creative strides. So I love that the team here is doing it. Now, before we dive into this episode with so many comic book references, low-key ones, but boy, this is comics accurate. Somebody read the comics. I loved WandaVision so much. I thought it was so good. But I think part of the disappointment with the show was that Jack Schaefer, one of the main people on it, admitted that she did not care for the comics. And I think that in the end really hurt her. But it seems quite clear that, Malcolm Spellman, who's the head show writer here, that he did his homework. And I think that he will reap the benefits because of that. But speaking of Malcolm Spellman, I don't know if you have seen this story lately. It was in the news, but All Rise, the show on CBS, its showrunner, a white individual, was fired for being really abusive and insensitive with his writing team. He had a very diverse writer's room, but it seemed that it ended up they were just for show, and that he was dismissive of their ideas and their concerns about the stories that he was telling about characters of color. And some of you might, I urge you to read up on what happened. I'll actually put some links down below. Horrific, really poorly handled, just so bad. I feel bad for everyone who had to deal with that on that show. And that stars Misty Knight, by the way, from the Marvel Netflix show. So it's crazy. But this is like the opposite of that. I don't know if you saw the featurette that they released. I believe, this week is like, time seems crazy for some reason this week in particular, but I think it was on Thursday. They released a featurette behind the scenes on Falcon the Winter Soldier, and it was really impressive how diverse the storytellers are behind this show. You have a white director of all the episodes. You have a showrunner who is a person of color, Malcolm Spellman. I believe one of the producers that highlighted is also a person of color. But two of the writers, Malcolm Spellman wrote the first episode. He oversees all the writing. But Michael Castelline wrote today's. He is, I believe, a white individual. And Derek Kolstad, who did the John Wick, wrote the John Wick movies, and Nobody, which comes out today. He wrote the 3 and 4. I only see on Wikipedia the writers for the first 4 episodes. But they're still telling, I believe, what seems to me to be a very authentic, nuanced, sophisticated story that goes there. And I'm curious, for those of you who are members of, who are people of color, how do you think the show is handling these subject matters? But it's like such an ideal group of people who they put together to make this show. And I think that's why they're having the success that they are in telling a very tricky story. But they are doing a phenomenal job. Okay, so let's break it down. This is so great. I love it so much. Oh, and by the way, the trailers were so good at doing misdirects. Like, I was so surprised multiple times in this episode. I was like, what? I didn't know that was gonna... Like, it was just so fantastic. It was just really, really impressive. And I think the overall themes here are... I can't believe the shadow that Steve Rogers casts. I think everybody on this show is trying to be like Steve. But I think they all need to learn. They need to be like themselves. So I think that's great. And then also that good and evil isn't so black and white. It's more of a gray zone. Maybe Zemo's not so bad, or, when you need him. And, maybe the U.S. government's not so great. I think you should never trust anybody 100%, to be honest with you. I think you should do everything on a case-by-case basis. Never blindly trust anything. All right, so let's break it down. So we start out in this, I don't know, I feel like this show cheaped out a little bit in some cases. I wish it was longer. I think 6 episodes isn't enough for what they're trying to tackle. I would have loved to have seen John Walker's world tour instead of the probably the cheapest location he went to, which was his high school. And then I would have liked, I mean, we'll talk about Isaiah Bradley when we get to him. But, again, show don't tell. Number 1 rule of screenwriting. I would have liked to have seen him face off with Bucky back in the day, or the Winter Soldier. And I would have liked to have seen what happened to him. Although, hey, maybe someday we will. I mean, I don't think they have the space in this show to do it, but I would really like to see it. I think we need to see it. I think it would be disrespectful not for us to eventually someday see it. Maybe if they tell Patriot's story, it'll involve some flashbacks about his grandfather. All right, so, boy, shout out to Wyatt Russell. I'm familiar with his work, but not that familiar. He is a very good actor. I think he's doing a great job. This character, John Walker, has so many layers, and as we peel them back in this episode alone, you start to see not only how entitled he is, but what a jerk he is. It's great. It's so well done. I think it's just fantastic. So he's like, he's back in his old locker room, and he sees his old locker. His name's still there. He vandalized. So also, it's very, very interesting that, he has friends of color, because, race is a big part of the discussion here, as you'll see in this episode as we break it down. So I'll be curious to see where they're going with this, that, both of his, I don't know if this is like his friend or his girlfriend or wife, or if that's, let's see, Hoskins' sister, and maybe they're all friends. It isn't particularly well established. But the 2 people he interacts with here who knew him from school days are people of color. So they're all, it's John Walker in this opening seems like a pretty nice guy, right? He seems cool. So he's getting ready, and he, just like Captain America in the first Avenger, he doesn't like the handshaking part of the deal, right? He's like, I'm not just a symbol, I'm not just a product placement for the U.S. government. I want to actually be a hero and do things. So I like that mirroring. And I thought it was funny that they referenced Good Morning America here. I have mixed feelings about using the news services of these entertainment empires. I guess they, why not get the advertisement? And it has to be some news service. Why not the one they own? But it's very jarring to start to see Good Morning America here, and then when you see Godzilla versus Kong, they actually use CNN. Gone are the days when it would be like something that was clearly supposed to be CNN or supposed to be Good Morning America. Now they're actually using it because they own these news things. So it's crazy. It's a little bit too close to home on what this show is trying to say, actually. So we have this great event, and I love that he signs his own action figure. They got those out fast, right? Did the proceeds go to GRC, the Global Recreation Council? And actually, when you think about it, using the term reparations, that council comes up twice in the conversation for this episode, so it's clearly important. And their logo is in the end credits. But, reparations, of course, are supposed to be, a big part of the slavery discussion in the United States. And to use that as part of this, I think, is a very conscious choice. So anyway, I do wonder who gets the money from these toys. So he's signing the toys. I like that it says 6th scale replica. And I think often Wyatt Russell's John Walker in his costume looks like an action figure because he doesn't have the build. He didn't, I don't know why he didn't bulk up like Chris Evans did. But, I'm not going to see him ripping any tree stumps in half. Although maybe by the end of the series, I think he and Hoskins are going to want to get juiced. So I think they're very, very specific here in showing that everybody's a fan of John Walker because they don't know how Sam was treated by the U.S. government. So you have all different demographics who just love this guy. And so he goes up on stage, and this is a very, very orchestrated public event. They've got the American flag back there held by both cheerleaders and soldiers. It doesn't get any more American than that. Although I do love that women in this episode have the super soldier serum. It's pretty cool. And so he's getting interviewed, and I think it's interesting that he grew up in Georgia. I mean, wow! Talk about ripped from the headlines with that horrible bill that was just passed about, trying to keep people from voting. That's just appalling. This thing is just ripped from the headlines, and it brings us into, I think, important but difficult discussions. So anyway, I hope that Georgia can fix that. So he's being interviewed, and they tell us a little bit about his history. And we're like, oh, thank you. So I wrote down the highlights here. He's the first person to ever receive 3 medals of honor and MIT studied his body for some reason, but he doesn't have superpowers. I'm like, why? I mean, I guess he's in that peak physical condition. I'm a little surprised that normal people can use the shield, and he's quite good with it, to be fair. He got good real fast. But Sam can use it, so I guess that makes sense. But I have to say, every time John Walker uses the shield, I feel personally offended, which is how Bucky feels when he's watching the show. I just thought that was fantastic. And we get a little more information here where John Walker says he came out of West Point. He was out of West Point for 2 years when Steve came out of the ice. West Point, if you're not from the United States, if you don't know, West Point is our military academy. So that would ideally give John Walker leadership skills, which he clearly abuses during this episode, but on paper, he looks good. So Bucky's horrified. And I think that's just, and again, I think that Bucky, I think both Sam and Bucky are dealing with this idea that they're not good enough to be Captain America. And I think it's making them both feel really bad. But in reality, the worst guy possible got it. So it's what I was talking about last week with my recap. Never turn an opportunity down because you feel you're not good enough, because 9 times out of 10, or maybe even sometimes 10 times out of 10, someone who certainly isn't worthy will pop up and say, I'll do it, and then everybody's screwed. All right, so I love that they have these Cap is Back posters everywhere. I'd be like, who hung all these up? I feel bad that Torres was downgraded so significantly this episode. I'm like, oh, Torres, but it was a crowded episode. So Bucky's like, what the hell, man? Why'd you give that shield up? And I like they have their little conversation about, the big three. I think that's hilarious. Androids, aliens, and wizards. And I love that it has a callback later in the episode. I thought that was great. And I love that, that great joke. They told that in advance, though, because it was an advanced clip. But I love that Bucky's like, oh, yeah, I read Lord of the Rings when it first came out. I thought that was great. So he's like, I'm coming with you. And I don't know where he got to change of clothes, but they're on the plane. And I love that they both leave. And again, everyone's trying to be Steve. He always jumped out of a plane. So although Sam, to be fair, does wear wings, so that's kind of his thing. And then Bucky's like, okay, I'm coming, but they're too low for him to use a parachute. I don't. They must have parachutes on the plane. But it's like, Torres is like, we're too low. It wouldn't do you any good. Although I have to say, I'm amazed that Sam can often get wind to keep him afloat as a bird in some circumstances. In some circumstances, I don't know if the physics would work, but as a comic book show, so whatever. But so Bucky's like, screw it. So he tears off his sleeve. He's like, yeah. I thought that was funny. We see the origin of his jacket. It tears off quite neatly. And then I love that he jumps out of the plane and he just lands on his back. It was hilarious. Instead of doing even a superhero landing, Deadpool style. I thought that was great. And I thought it was funny that Sam recorded it all. I thought their interactions within this warehouse were comedy gold. Oh, I loved it. And not only was it well written or improvised, I interviewed the director and they said it was a mix of both, but the delivery was just so good. Both of them are very, very funny. So Bucky's sneaking around, and I like that Sam's like, oh, you spent a little time in Wakanda and you go all White Panther on me. And Bucky's like, it's White Wolf, thank you very much. And everyone's like, I thought that was great. Another comic book reference. And so then he turns and Sam's right next to him, which I don't know how Sam accomplished, by the way. Maybe he kind of like glided in there. It was funny. But I love the look on Bucky's face when he's like, how'd you catch up to me? And this is my favorite line in the episode because the delivery was just so perfect. But I loved it when Sam goes, what'd I miss? Nothing. Because he was right there. It was so good. It was just delivered so perfectly. And I'm glad no one laughed on set and ruined the take. It was just amazing. So they see that these are the Flag Smashers, Red Wing, which can do a lot of stuff. I'm like, how'd you find them? Red Wing found them. I'm like, is he AI? Is he going to become another Vision and stand next to him as Red Wing? So anyway, look, they're all super strong. So that's amazing to me. So they've got 8 super soldiers here. So they're just lifting stuff up, but they believe there's a hostage, but we all knew there wasn't a hostage. So I love to see Bucky strut his super soldier serum stuff, right? So he's off, he takes off, catches up to the first truck, and it says, keep frozen, which reminds me of the coronavirus vaccine. So it seems I thought maybe it was more super soldier serum. Maybe there's some stuffed in there as well. But later on in the episode, they said they were trying to get this vaccine, it seems, to communities that needed it after the blip, who were displaced. They come back, the world moved on without them. And so I think maybe they are actually vaccines. I think the Flag Smashers are actually, their methods are not great, but I think they're well-intentioned. So I loved the way that this actress handled this. I thought that was just so fantastic that she's like, oh, wow, I don't need help. And then she punches him out of the truck. And I love that she stands there and they have kind of like Terminator music come on and she puts on her Flag Smasher's helmet. And you can see her handprint matches. So it looks like they make them themselves. But I like a turkey. It's, you graduate from Thanksgiving turkey to Flag Smasher's mask. We'll talk about her name in a moment when it comes up. I don't want to get ahead of myself. So I just loved this moment. I just thought that, look, the GRC logo. So they took it from GRC. Oh, that's great. I think GRC is an evil organization. So so again, it stands for Global Recreation Council. So they took that and they're like, we'll decide who this goes to. And she uses her abilities to jump up on top of the truck and she grabs Red Wing and she breaks it. Although this is actually a lucky break for Sam because as we find out shortly, that's how the new Captain America and Battlestar tracked them. So that means no more tracking them. So I think so it actually ended up being in their favor and they can build him again. So I was so shocked. If you were watching this episode with me, you saw it. I was shocked when Captain America showed up. And he looks so action figure-y there. It's hilarious. He looks like I posed him and put him right there on the helicopter. Although I believe a VFX person probably did. So hilarious. So I couldn't believe that he showed up. I was shocked. So he jumped down. I was both shocked that he was in this action sequence. And also I was like, you're not Captain America. You get out of here, you imposter. So he jumps down. And I think she's also like, what fresh hell is this? So, and then I was also super shocked when this guy, because, I was not familiar with Battlestar until after this episode. So I was like, I didn't expect the guy from the locker room at the beginning of the episode to be in the field. So he swings in, and I love this pose. They're both right out of Central Casting. I think that Wyatt Russell looks not great in the mask. Although, to be fair, even Chris Evans struggled with the mask. But when he doesn't have his mask on, I think Wyatt Russell looks perfect. Like absolutely perfect. But this actor, Clay Bennett, he looks phenomenal. I mean, look at that jawline. I mean, he's just fantastic. I just couldn't be happier. Nobody here should be a sidekick, but he does not look like a sidekick. So he's just fantastic. So they're like, here we are, we're going to help you out. And I love the way Sam looks at them. He's like, be professional, be professional. And to Sam's credit, he is professional. But boy, we all feel how hard that is. So they're like, hey, we're here to help you. And so Sam gets kicked off the truck. And this is another instance where I was like, how does he get enough wind velocity under his wings that he can do that? But it was cool to watch. So then we're all shocked when John Walker pulls a gun. To be fair, when Bucky was Captain America in the comics, he also used a gun. But it's really disturbing to see. I'm like, what the hell? And it was meant to be disturbing, and so it's very effective. But, he is trying to save Battlestar. So anyway, I love that, Sam, meanwhile, sees that Bucky's having trouble holding on, because I guess he didn't get a chance to hold on with his bionic arm. And he's not slowing the truck down enough, so he goes under, as we all said, National Lampoon Christmas Vacation style, and he grabs him, and I love the wings. The CGI team did a great job there. He just so much often looks like a real bird to me. It's really cool. And then I love that they land in the grass like that. There are a lot of if you're shipping Sam and Bucky, there are a lot of really amazing moments this episode. So anyway, meanwhile, Battlestar gets kicked off, and I love that this is so great. So John Walker uses the shield to catch him, and I love their exchange because they're like these bros just playing hero. They have no idea what's at stake. So I love that they're like, yeah, and then I love John Walker's like, yeah, buddy, we're doing great. Isn't this fun? I thought that was hilarious. I mean, that Wyatt Russell's very funny. But he soon gets kicked off the top of the truck by our lead Flag Smasher, and look at him there. He's not going to stand for that. He's going to want to be a super soldier too. He's going to want to get juiced. All right, so anyway, look how beautiful the countryside looks. So Sam and Bucky are walking along, and they're like, how the hell did we get 8 new super soldiers? Where did they come from? Because again, they're protecting Cap's legacy. They feel it's not only a danger to the world, but they're concerned about, again, Cap's legacy. So I think that's great. And I thought this was so funny. I couldn't believe this guy caught up again. He's like a bad penny. He won't stop turning up. So I love that he comes over and he says, come on, guys, it's too far to walk to the airport. And I love that first they walk by and then they get in. It was just very funny. It was just great. So here they are, very uncomfortable, like, looking in a mirror here. They're all sitting across from each other. I like that this shows that maybe Bucky is Sam's sidekick. I think, clearly it's Falcon's show. Thank you very much. So they're in the truck and they have this conversation. It's a great conversation. It's really, really good. And they reveal that he's like, how did you guys find the Flag Smashers? And they're like, we were tracking you, buddy. Because remember he said the government, I don't like them to touch it. But I guess when they were playing with Red Wing, they put a tracker in there. Although I'm not at all surprised. And so you can see it's not so clear who's the good guys and who the bad guys are. Like these guys on the left, I think are clearly really super shady. So they talk about the GRC. This is the first time they're officially mentioned in the episode. And they say that, they are taking care of returned people, but I suspect other things because it's revealed that they are funding and giving resources to the new Cap and Battlestar. And then when he finds out that his name is Battlestar, I think this is great. Bucky's like, seriously, stop the truck. Like he's like, because I think they feel they're playing hero. Because Battlestar is totally that kind of a name. Like, who came up with that? It's hilarious. So I thought Sebastian Stan's delivery there was also excellent. So John Walker tries to appeal to Sam, and he says, I'm just trying to be the best Cap I can be. I'm not trying to replace Steve. And then he really slides the knife in. Like it's so expertly, horribly done. And he says, it'd be a whole lot easier if I had Cap's wingman at my side. It's just so undercuts Sam's integrity and what he does and what he contributes. It's just really horrible. And it's like, and I love Sam's response. It's like, it's always that last line. Like, you almost had me. And you can see why Sam is so distrustful and why he didn't want the shield. But it's about to get even more appalling. But anyway, first we take a little side detour and we see that the Flag Smashers have found a hideout for the night in this internet cafe. They're hiding them in the back. That's a great place to hide. And she gets a text from an unknown private number that says, you took what was mine. I'm going to find you and kill you. And we all thought it was Zemo, but it's actually revealed to be Power Broker. Power Broker is from the comics, and they are the organization in the comics gave the powers and ultimately juiced up John Walker and Lemar Hoskins. So that's very interesting. They're actually, again, a company, and they have Dr. Carl Malice is their lead. So let's see if Dr. Carl Malice shows up. And in the comics, they create a super soldier serum, and they also add a highly addictive element to it to keep clients in line, having to come back to them. So let's see what happens to, I think there might be a steroids metaphor coming up in here, which is interesting because we're going to meet Patriot, and Patriot actually had a steroids storyline in Young Avengers. It works with the sports thing they got going on there with the football thing. I mean, it's all very interesting. So she's really nervous about it. She's like, he probably can find me. And then they said, okay, our pictures are all over. They're all over. The government found them all out because I guess Red Wing was recording before he got broken. I'm sure he uploads it as he records. So they have this tech guy with them. And he's like, I'm erasing everything, but not before we see Interpol's wanted for Karli Morgenthau. And that's actually in the comics, Karli Morgenthau. They gender bent the character, and I think did a lot more than that. I think she's actually going to end up being a heroic character, which I think is great. I think it's great because it works with that gray zone that this show is exploring. There's no clear-cut good guys and bad guys. So back on the plane, Bucky's like, we're taking that shield back. And I think Sam had a good point where he's like, last time we stole the shield and Sharon gave it to us, we were on the run for 2 years. And he's like, he just finally came back to his family. He was on the run for 2 years and he got blipped. No wonder his sister's so upset. I didn't even think of the fact that he was a fugitive for a while. All right, so Bucky's like, I want you to meet somebody. So we're like, who is it? And unlike WandaVision, it delivers big time on the mystery guest. So, and we get it right away. So they go to Baltimore, and I love this exchange with this child. He says, oh, it's Black Falcon. And he says, are you Black Kid? And I just thought that was really, it was just so it was a funny, but yet really a zinger of an interaction. I thought it was great. And it's a little bit of a hit on the Black Lightning character. So a little Marvel DC shots fired there. So they go to this house, and we don't really get a good look, but that is Eli. that's Eli Bradley, who is a young Avenger. So he's on the map. We got another young Avenger on the board. I can't wait to get a better look at him, and I hope we get to explore this story more. So he says, tell him it's the guy from, that bar or something. And so he comes in, and it's Carl Lumbly, who, as many of you pointed out, voices Martian Manhunter in the Justice League animated series. And I'm not sure why he got older, but Bucky didn't. I guess maybe he got a variation of the super soldier serum. But basically, he says, we met in 51, so the super soldier serum was done for him after Cap went in the ice. So clearly the government was trying to recreate what created Captain America, but they decided to experiment on soldiers of color. And one worked, Isaiah Bradley, and they were using him, off the books, because, I think this is really interesting. This is like a Ghost of Christmas Future or Captain America Future. It's like Sam's worst nightmare come true. The whole reason he couldn't take the shield, because he was like, he's like, I can't imagine what might happen to me. And now he sees how bad it could have been. So Carl Lumbly, aka Isaiah Bradley, is like, oh yeah, I went toe to toe with the Winter Soldier and I took half his arm. And I'm like, I wish I could see that sequence, please. And then he said, oh, well, you know what happened to me? I went to prison. I had to be in prison. He's like really, really upset, as he should be. And I love the reveal that he has super soldier serum. He's still got it when he embeds that in the wall. Don't ruin your own home, Isaiah. And he's like, I had to be in prison, and not only did the government come and poke and prod me, but so did your guys, which we find out, it's pretty clear, the reference, but, Bucky gets it, Hydra. So basically, he was a living source of super soldier serum that was around for a while. So he's a pretty good lead as to where these 8 people came from. They should go, I guess there wouldn't be prison logs, but, that's kind of the idea that they have. But I love that he said, I just wanted to see if you had your how much of your arm was left, Winter Soldier, and if you were here to kill me. And then Bucky's like, I'm not a killer anymore. And I love that Isaiah Bradley says, like, you can just decide that. He said, maybe you can. I think that was great. It was very, very interesting exchange, very potent. And of course, Sam's really upset, not only because it's unfair to Isaiah that he was never, revealed to the public or the world, but it hits so close to home because, Sam sees the shades of himself in that. And I think that I really disagree with Bucky making this decision. He's like, I thought Isaiah had been through enough. I'm like, that's not your call to make. You should have asked Isaiah. I'd be like, would you like to meet Steve Rogers and talk to him about it? I think Isaiah would have liked that. And I also think Steve should have had the decision to make that. I think it's a really bad idea to make decisions for other people. I just really think it's a bad idea. You don't have to tell anybody where the other person is. You'd be like, well, just, for fun, if there was another super soldier person around who'd been seriously wronged by the U.S. government, would you want to meet them? I'm sure Steve would put things together, but I think Bucky had Steve wrapped around his little finger pretty tight. I think he could have handled it. But then, wow, is this another really, like, this interaction, again, it's short, but it works on so many different levels. It's amazing. It works on a story level, a social commentary level. So the police show up, and of course they immediately assume that Sam's giving Bucky a problem. So they're like, is this man bothering you? And you're like, whoa, I love that they handled it. Especially because on All Rise, that show that I mentioned to you on CBS, they didn't want to handle stuff like this, which really upset their writer's room. And so I think this is fantastic that this show goes here. So, and this is so perfect. So some of you, I can see some people complaining about this scene, but let me explain to you why it's important to include it. So this guy's like, is this gentleman bothering you, Bucky? And then the other police officer whispers to him, and he's like, oh, that's Falcon. He's an Avenger. And this is this is a comic book example of what happens to a lot of celebrities and athletes, celebrity athletes of color in real life. You've heard so many instances in the news of celebrities of color who are targeted by the police, tackled to the ground, and then they're like, oh, sorry, I didn't realize who you were. And it's like, oh, so only once if you think I'm famous, you treat me with compassion and a fair shake? So that's what this scene is about. It's the comic book version of it, and I just think it's fantastic. But then they're like, surprise, we're arresting you, Bucky, because there's a warrant out for your arrest. But we find out that it was not the psychiatrist who did it because, he missed his court-appointed therapy session, but John Walker did it. He's like, I'll make you come to me if you think you're going to just get away from me. It's so underhanded. It's such entitlement. And I love the way he does this. I love the psychiatrist is like, I didn't authorize this. And I like, because Walker's like, he's not going to be going to any more therapy sessions, actually. So as you can see how important therapy was, it was just a front for Walker to try and get Bucky under his thumb. And he's like, actually, he's not going to be reporting to any more therapy sessions because he's going to be working with me. And the therapist is like, who authorized this? And I love the way Wyatt Russell does this. And he's like, this guy. By the way, I love that his harness ties in with his logo. That's good design. All right, so then she's like, quick, we have to have a therapy session. And I think all of us, one of you in the live stream was like, I've had enough therapy sessions. And I agree, this should be the last one. It slows us down too much. But we did get something good out of it. We got this knee in the groin, which again, I'm like, whoa, are you like writing like fan fiction here or what? And then I like that she says, why does Sam bother you? But don't give me a childish answer. And she got a real one. And I love that Bucky said, if Cap was wrong about you, then maybe he was wrong about me. And I was like, oh, I didn't even think of that, Bucky. Great character motivation. And, Sam is like, I don't appreciate that none of you are giving me credit for just doing what I thought was right. I think that he should have said, did you not see what happened to Isaiah Bradley? I think that's I think I would have added that as well. But I mean, clearly the context is there. I think Sam might not even have totally processed it yet. So maybe he does need some therapy sessions. But anyway, Sam's like, look, let's just put this, let's shove it down deep inside ourselves and we'll just part ways when this is all done. And I liked when he said, thanks for making it weird, Doc. I thought that was a great parting line. And Bucky says, goodbye, Doc. Oh, Bucky, I think you still need therapy. You have to come back. So they go outside and again, the entitlement. These guys are playing with a police car siren to get their attention. I mean, wow. So they're like, yeah, we think they're trying to get this medicine to the camps. And Bucky's really pushes Walker. And he's like, do you know where she is or not? And he's like, you're pretty intense, aren't you? And I love the look that Walker gives him. You can start to see Walker falling apart. Wow. I love that. And then Sam says, we can't work together because we're free agents. We have flexibility and you don't. So it's better off if we part ways. And then John Walker says, word of advice then, stay the hell out of my way. Not the kind of stuff that Captain America would say, thank you very much. And then he turns and leaves and the light catches the shield. And I felt as bad as when Tony Stark saw Steve walk away with it after what happened to his parents. I felt when Tony said, you don't deserve that shield, my father made that for you, and now you're covering for his murderer. That really got me, and this really gets me too. And now I'm on Steve's side, and I'm like, how dare you carry Steve's shield? It just shows you, again, nothing's black and white, everything's in a gray zone, and it just shows you the sophistication and how things change and things are constantly evolving, and it's just fascinating. But it's a symbol. It's just like that ties into the speech from the first episode. That symbols are made important by the men and women that carry them, and the wrong person is carrying this symbol. And he's tarnishing it with this evil douchiness. I love it. And then you can see that they both see that. They're like, we got that guy. We got to get that shield back. So we know that they do, because we've seen it in the credits when they're throwing it around at Sam's house. So then we have this little thing at the end where they're trying to load up all this vaccine to the plane, and he's like, I'll stop the power broker, and he's going to sacrifice himself. So he pushes over this, power tower, and you can see the look of fear in his face there. And you can see he made his own mask as well. I felt really bad for this guy. And she does too. And I couldn't believe how fast he got taken down. Are you bulletproof if you take the super soldier serum? Then why did anyone just shoot Cap? It's an interesting question. But he gets taken down. This power broker employee runs after and reports to his boss. And he's like, they got away. Of course they did. We have 4 episodes to go. So then Bucky and Sam are walking along, and Bucky's like, you know what we have to do? Because Walker's got no leads, which means the government has no leads, which means we got to go to the bad guys. And this was very well written too, when he says, you know what he meant when he said my people. And at first, Sam thinks he's referring to white people. He's like, don't take it personally. And he's like, no, Hydra. And Sam's like, whoa, are you suggesting what I think you're suggesting? And, Bucky's like, Hydra's still active. Zemo knows all of Hydra's secrets. He would know where there might be a super soldier serum, a formula out there. So again, the enemy of the enemy of my enemy is my friend. So I just thought that was great. And I love Sam's line. He's like, okay then, we're going to go see Zemo. I love how well balanced their characters out, that no one is actually the sidekick. They both get great lines, they get great moments. And the camera work also works very hard to favor both of them equally in different shots. So they're like, we're going to go see Zemo. And I was like, what? You're working with Zemo? This is insane. I never saw that coming. So we go to Berlin. He's in Berlin again. He's in prison. And this was the prison that we saw in the trailers. I never would have guessed that it was housing Zemo. So it's clearly high security. He has a special little thing on his cell, as you can see. I think they're going to break him out. Wouldn't that be amazing? Are Bucky and Sam going to break Zemo out? And of course he's playing chess, as all great villains in prison do. And then there he is sitting there. I guess wonder where he's going to get a purple mask from. That's going to be an interesting thing, because I thought he would have it when the show started. And then you see Daniel Bruhl, who I love. Go watch Rush. Rush is such a good movie, and Daniel Bruhl is so good in it. And it stars an MCU fan favorite, Chris Hemsworth, but it's Daniel Bruhl's movie. It's also extremely well directed. Ron Howard did such a good job. Ron Howard did such a good job there. And he did such a bad job every time afterwards. By the way, the actress who plays Karli Morgenthau was actually, of course, in Solo, directed by Ron Howard. So anyway, I'm very excited to see Zemo next week. It's a great cliffhanger ending. So that's this week's episode. I'm very curious to hear your thoughts. What do you think of the story points? What do you think of the social commentary? Who are your favorites? And what do you think of how sophisticated this is? And that really are, so far, I think, no clear-cut good guys or bad guys, except, of course, for Sam and Bucky. All right, again, share your thoughts down below, subscribe today, and of course, as always, you can check out some more videos right now.